My life in Bucharest had become a slow suffocation, a grey haze of monotony that clung to me like damp fog. I'm John, 28, wiry, with brown hair that hadn't seen a comb in months and eyes that carried the weight of too many sleepless nights. For years, I'd trudged through a job I loathed, an office drone hunched over spreadsheets in a cubicle that smelled of stale coffee and toner, only to return to a cramped flat where the walls seemed to whisper my failures. The city itself, Romania's restless capital, had lost its charm, its streets choked with exhaust, its skies heavy with unfulfilled promises. I was a ghost, haunting my own existence, until one Tuesday morning when something snapped. I quit, left my ID badge on the desk, walked out into the drizzle, and decided to run. Not away, but towards something. Prague, a name that flickered in my mind from a tattered travel magazine, became my destination. I'd get there by train, letting the rails stitch together the pieces of a life I'd let unravel. It all started at Gara de Nord, Bucharest's sprawling, chaotic train station, a beast of concrete and steel pulsing with life. The air was thick with diesel fumes, burnt coffee, and the sharp tang of sweat from 1,000 travelers jostling past. Voices overlapped, Romanian curses, hurried farewells, a loudspeaker crackling with announcements I couldn't parse. My backpack hung heavy on one shoulder, stuffed with clothes, a notebook, and a few loo crumpled in my pocket. I clutched my ticket, bought online in a frantic burst of resolve, and scanned the platforms for the overnight train to Budapest, the first leg of my escape. There it was on platform 3, a hulking relic of faded red and white, its paint peeling like old skin, its windows smudged with the ghosts of past journeys. I'd booked a couchette, a 6-berth sleeper, because it was cheap and I figured sleep might come easier with the world moving beneath me. The whistle pierced the air, a shrill cry that jolted my nerves, and the train shuddered forward, dragging me out of Bucharest like a lifeline pulling me from deep water. The compartment was a tight, dimly lit box, green upholstery worn thin, metal walls scratched with graffiti from travelers long gone. 5 strangers shared the space with me, an elderly Romanian woman, her floral scarf tied tight under her chin, clutching a leather purse as if it held her whole life, Victor, a Hungarian student with sharp cheekbones and earbuds dangling from his neck, scrolling endlessly on his phone, Klaus, a German backpacker with a patchy beard and a faint whiff of patchouli, his lanky frame sprawled across 2 seats, and a quiet Polish couple in their 40s, whispering to each other in soft, melodic tones. We exchanged nods, a silent pact among strangers bound by the rhythm of the rails, and I climbed to the top bunk, the ladder creaking under my weight. The mattress was a slab of foam, the blanket rough against my skin, but I didn't care. I lay back, staring at the ceiling inches from my nose, as the train rocked westward. Outside, Bucharest's sodium-lit sprawl dissolved into the countryside, flat fields stretching under a bruised twilight sky, haystacks like dark sentinels, the occasional flicker of a farmhouse window glowing in the distance. Sleep came in fragments, snatched between the train's jolts and the old woman's gentle snoring, a sound that wove into the clack-clack of the wheels on the tracks. Around 2 a.m., we hit Lokashaza, the Hungarian border, a nowhere place of floodlights and barbed wire. The compartment door slid open with a clang, and 2 guards stormed in, their boots thudding, their faces carved from stone. Passport, one barked, his breath sour with cigarettes. I fumbled for mine, heart racing, not from fear, but from the raw thrill of crossing a line I'd never dared before. He stamped it with a grunt and moved on, leaving the air heavy with tension. I pressed my face to the window, the cold glass fogging under my breath, and caught the glint of a border sign in the darkness. It felt like a baptism, Romania behind me, something new ahead. Dawn broke over Hungary, spilling pink and gold across the plains. I sat up, rubbing the grit from my eyes, and watched the world unfold, villages of red-tiled roofs clustered like mushrooms, church spires stabbing the sky, an old man in a wool cap guiding a donkey cart along a dirt road. The landscape was vast, hypnotic, a balm to the chaos I'd carried from Bucharest. Klaus stirred below, stretching with a groan, and tossed me a granola bar from his bag. "First time in Hungary?" he asked, his accent a cheerful lilt. I nodded, tearing into the bar, oats and honey, a burst of sweetness on my tongue. "Wait till Prague, man," he said, grinning. The beer, the bridges, it's magic. I managed a half-smile, his energy a spark against my gloom. We rolled into Budapest Keleti at 8:50 a.m., the station a grand dame of faded glory, its glass roof arched high, filtering sunlight into a mosaic of shadows on the tiled floor. My legs wobbled as I stepped off, stiff from the bunk, the air sharp with the scent of coal and pastries from a nearby stall. I had less than an hour before the Eurocity to Prague departed, so I darted to a kiosk, grabbing a coffee, black, bitter, scalding my throat as I gulped it down. The next train waited on platform 7, a sleek contrast to the overnight relic, air-conditioned, with wide windows and seats in neat rows of blue fabric. I found my spot by the window, stashed my backpack overhead, and sank in, the engine's hum vibrating through my bones as we pulled out of Budapest. The 7-hour ride to Prague was a slow dance through Europe's heart. Hungary unfurled in waves of green, rolling hills patched with vineyards, the Danube River glinting like molten silver as it wound through the land. I pulled out my notebook, its pages already curling at the edges, and scribbled, Day 1. Past Budapest. The world feels bigger than I remembered, and I feel smaller, but not in a bad way. Klaus reappeared, plopping across from me with a grin. He'd caught the same train, a coincidence that felt like fate. "You're quiet, John," he said, popping open a bag of pretzels and offering me some. I took a handful, the salt crunching between my teeth, and shrugged. He didn't push, just launched into a story about hitchhiking through Slovakia, a truck swerving, a farmer's wife giving him bread, his laughter filling the carriage. I let it wash over me, a lifeline to pull me from the questions clawing my mind. Why had I stayed so long in a life that fit like a borrowed coat, too tight and frayed at the edges? Slovakia sharpened the scenery, hills rising like green knuckles, forests thickening into a dark, whispering sea. The train slowed near Devon Castle, a ruin perched on a cliff, its grey stones jagged against the sky, its empty windows staring down like hollow eyes. I pressed my face to the glass, imagining the clang of swords, the rustle of silk gowns, a world swallowed by time. Victor glanced up from his phone, tugging out an earbud. "Devon," he said, his voice soft, almost reverent. "Very old. Fought over for centuries." I nodded, scribbling it down, the name a tether to this fleeting moment. The train picked up speed, the castle fading into mist, and I felt a pang, not sadness, but a hunger for stories I'd never know. The Czech Republic arrived with golden wheat fields and the Elbe River, a silver thread weaving through valleys. This stretch was famous, the Eurocity hugging the river's bends between Dresden and Prague, and it didn't disappoint. Villages with red roofs glowed like embers against the green, church steeples pierced the horizon, and the water shimmered under a midday sun that felt like a promise. I ate my packed sandwich, crusty bread, sharp cheese, smoky ham, its flavors grounding me as I watched the world glide by. Klaus napped across from me, his head lolling, and I wrote again, somewhere in Czechia. The train moves, and I'm moving too, not just forward, but inward. I don't know what I'll find. Prague Hlavní nádraží emerged at 3:50 p.m., an Art Nouveau masterpiece, curved arches, tiled floors, a ceiling that soared with elegance. I stepped onto the platform, boots echoing, and inhaled the crisp March air, March 24, 2025, a date that felt like a milestone. I'd crossed 1,083 kilometers from Bucharest, shedding a skin I'd outgrown. The station thrummed, tourists with cameras, locals with bags, a busker strumming a guitar, his notes weaving through the crowd. I hoisted my backpack and walked out, the city unfurling like a map I'd yet to learn. That evening, I wandered into the old town, cobblestones slick from a light drizzle, the air cool against my face. The Charles Bridge spanned the Vltava River, its statues, saints, kings, martyrs, standing sentinel, their stone faces weathered by centuries. I leaned on the railing, the iron cold under my palms, and watched the water ripple below, catching the golden glow of street lights. A vendor nearby roasted chestnuts, their smoky sweetness mingling with the damp, earthy scent of the river. A street performer played a violin, the melody haunting, and I felt something crack open, not a flood, but a steady trickle of clarity. I'd fled a life that didn't fit, but here, in Prague's ancient embrace, I glimpsed a self I might become. I found a hostel near Wenceslas Square, a creaky building with peeling paint and a window overlooking the city's spires. My bunk was narrow, the sheets threadbare but clean, and I lay there, notebook on my chest, listening to Prague's heartbeat, trams clattering, voices laughing in Czech, the clock tower tolling midnight with a deep, resonant chime. I wrote, Day 1 ends in Prague. The train carried me here, but I carried myself too. I'm not whole, not yet, but I see the pieces, scattered, sharp, mine. The journey wasn't over. I'd stay, days, weeks, exploring the castle on the hill, the beer halls Klaus swore by, the streets that twisted like riddles. The rails had rattled loose years of rust, leaving me raw, open, alive. I was John, untethered at last, chasing a horizon that shimmered just within reach, and for the first time I believed I might catch it.